Good evening. We will be conducting tonight's meeting here in City Hall Council Chambers as well as virtually using Zoom. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting tonight on Wave Channel 18 and online through the city's YouTube channel. If you would like to participate in live public comment via the Zoom platform, please refer to the agenda for instructions. Pastor Eric Long from the Salt Mine Church will be giving the invocation this evening, and Mayor Joyner will begin the meeting immediately after the invocation.
Thank you again, and what a privilege. So let's just pray. Father, we do just thank you for this evening, this beautiful weather that we're enjoying. As we come into these holidays, Lord, we pray that our city would be a city that would be just so full of gratefulness and helpfulness. And so, Lord, we just seek your wisdom and discernment and help as we really do strive to serve everybody in this community the best we can. And so we ask for your help as council members, as staff, as leaders in this community, that we would be as you've called us to be, just wonderful in doing good in this community. So we thank you again for the privilege, the opportunity to serve well in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks, Pastor Long. Appreciate it as always. All right, good evening and welcome to the September 26, 2023 regular meeting of the City Council, the Lincoln Redevelopment Successor Agency, and the Lincoln Public Financing Authority. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Andriotta.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Carl Skint.
Here.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Here.
And Mayor Joyner.
Here. Report from closed session. Christine?
There is no reportable action.
Thank you. Move on to item 4, Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilmember Andriotta, I understand you've got a couple of guests. in the
I do,
audience.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you. My husband teaches at Roseville High School, and we have 2 of his students. One of them was my 8th grade student, Nick and Torin, and they are here to do assignment. So I wanted to welcome them, and I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, boys, and welcome. We're glad you're here.
They will never come to a council meeting again.
Yeah.
We move on to item 5, agenda modifications. Council have any modifications to request?
Yes, Mayor, if you would mind pulling 8B, as I'd like to just address a couple things about that.
Got it. All right. Is there any member of the public that would like to have the council remove an item for discussion? Mr. Chapman. All right. Got it. Anyone else? Anyone online, Gwen?
Mayor, there are no hands raised online.
All right, very good. I skipped over was that we had no presentations tonight, so we're moving. Boy, I'm skipping over a lot. aren't I?
Everything, yeah.
No, I think Mr. Scully's shifted from agenda modifications to pulling consent, and so we jumped ahead a little bit, so we just step back a minute.
That's all right. Oh, I did jump forward, yeah. My apologies. With that, we'll move on to public comments. This is an opportunity for any member of the public who wishes to comment on an item not on our agenda tonight to do so. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on an item not on our agenda? I have one card so far, Mary Nader.
Good, I get to be first. Good evening. Actually, I have 2 things on my thing tonight. First of all, greetings to everybody tonight. I enjoy the weather like Tony was talking about. I sure feel badly for the Richmond American new home buyers for the May reports last meeting of their serious warranty problems. It seems that a company that has been in business as long as they would have had a better system set up to handle warranty complaints and issues. To have to retell your story to a different person each time, that was ridiculous. And I think those home buyers have been treated very callously by Richmond American Homes. I talked to a lady recently that said the same thing had happened to her in the Bay Area. She and others picketed on the sidewalk outside the sales office and were told to leave by the salespeople, but someone called a news crew about it and they came out and covered it and the problems were quickly solved. I think I would probably put a large sign in my yard or a window stating, "Ask me about my lemon of a home." But I trust the council when you guys said that you'll do as you said and stay on Richmond American's case to do the right thing for the people. Thanks, you guys. That was disheartening to hear that they were having that many problems. So I hope you'll allow me a little extra time. At the last meeting, I still had 2 minutes on the clock.
Oh,
But
I
I
don't know that
know,
we get rollover minutes.
but I know, okay, but I know. When the mayor said he was moving forward to the next item, and I wasn't prepared that night anyway, so it didn't, I would have jumped up if I would have been. But I know the presentations took a little bit longer and the lady that was gonna speak, she had to leave, so. Anyway, a few weeks ago on Facebook, I had seen something come up about smart cities. Others on there seemed to be alarmed about it, and I did some research. Another lady and I set up a meeting to discuss and raise questions we could bring to council because many were alarmed to see our city's name on a list to attend a conference in May 2024. And yes, one of our council members was graciously enough, and she was invited to come and she graciously came to the meeting and did spend an hour and a half with us answering questions. But I didn't think one council member decided the other 4 members' opinion, and that's why I came forward. I did call for the item to be agendized because as I understand the rules, it could not be discussed in detail unless it was on the agenda. Lo and behold, there was much animated discussion with even one member of the council putting his kibosh on any further discussion after twice admitting he'd never even heard of the smart city concept. And I was surprised the city attorney never stepped in to stop the unagendized discussion. I heard council say at the meeting that they have no plans to attend the conference in May 2024 and that they are not interested in becoming a smart city. But I did understand and heard the city manager that he had been the one to send the IT person to the previous conference to bring back cost-saving tech info. It would be helpful to many of us to know that he has no plan to persuade the council to entertain this program. So I would appreciate it if you would give the city manager an opportunity to affirm that he has no intention of bringing this program to our city. Being a smart city,
I need to ask you to wrap it up, Mary.
all right, being a smart city is more than just making your stoplights work more efficiently, as was stated at the last meeting. It's about controlling individuals' travel, where they can go, how far they can go, and basically how to live their lives. This would be very detrimental to our freedom. Remember, it's more than just security and technology. And I do have some information on smart cities in case one of the council members didn't get a chance to read the last ones.
Got it.
I
Thank you, Mary.
thank you.
To the best of my knowledge, that was simply a staff member going to a conference last year. Why Smart Cities chose to put the city of Lincoln on their materials, I guess, to give them credibility for their next event.
No, it was
Perhaps.
simply a list of the 2023
Is
participants.
that all it was?
That's
right.
all it was. And
So-
I've stated that multiple times.
So I'm going to say this, I'm not going to put handcuffs on the city manager and the types of training that he feels is appropriate for his staff. Staff does not work for us, they work for him. And I want him to have the ability to do what he thinks is appropriate. But I can tell you, as I think the entire council did last time, that we are not becoming a smart city. That is not a discussion we've had in any way, shape, or form. That's probably about as far as Christine's going to let me go on that one. Yep, I agree. All right, anyone else wishing to speak on an item not on our agenda tonight? Anyone online?
Yes, we do have a hand raised. Fran Neves, please go ahead.
Hi, I understood that the city already accepted lighting from the smart city people, but I don't want to speak about that because I don't know about that for sure. But I heard that we already accepted something from that group. Why I'm calling is because Saturday I went to the library and there were cars all over the place parked in the dirt, by the school. And I used to be on the lab lac, and I remember that second phase of 12 Bridges High School was supposed to be to expand the parking lot. And I was wondering, I know it is the school district's responsibility, but if you've been over there when they're having a football game or something else, and it's not just the high school now, they've rented out the facilities to Pop Warner. So there's lots and lots of activity over there, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, all day. And it's a hazard, it's dangerous, and the cardboard waste, recycling, it takes up a lot of parking spaces. So you might, a simple thing might be considering finding another place to put them. That would free up a lot of parking spaces. But it's another one of these things like an accident waiting to happen, like someone's going to get hurt walking down the dirt rocky hill, or someone's going to back into them. The cars are not parked, they're parked like double parked, triple parked, I don't know, all kinds of parked, thinking, well, we're all going to leave at the same time, So I would like to ask you to go over there and look at the situation yourself. Because even though it's the school district, I think the city is also responsible or could be held liable. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran.
So let me go in sequential order. Not to drag out the smart city discussion any longer. First of all, any member of the public that would like to discuss smart city attendance at conferences or our use of technology can call me and I will make myself available to discuss it as much as you'd like. To be very clear, and then I'm going to leave it because I know I'm probably going a little far here.
Oh, you can talk.
There is no, we are not adopting, we attend conferences all the time. Every single staff person in this room attends conferences that may have philosophical things that Lincoln as a community disagrees with. Mayor and council went to a conference just this last week that I'm sure there are a number of things that were mentioned that you don't agree with politically or philosophically. Our interest in attending these conferences, nothing more than trying to find efficient technology that may be able to allow us to do our jobs better or at a lower cost. It's that simple. The blanket term of smart city is an obscure term to me because smart is Alexa is a smart device. Your iPhone that you're carrying in your purse is a smart device. I understand that the concern has something to do with a political perspective, but that's not our interest in attending, and it's never our interest. I haven't sent one staff person in the totality of my career to any kind of training that was political in nature because it doesn't give us value. And it's inappropriate. So that's that. The second part is the 12 Bridges library thing has been a major problem that we've been working on. It's gotten really bad this year. Catherine, our librarian, has been working with me, and we've been working with the school district. The problem we have is that parents, as mostly away teams, the most logical, quickest place is the library parking lot. And so they fill up that lot. We've tried everything. We've tried signage. Chief's department has helped us try to get people to not use that space. We've contemplated putting up tow areas, but how do you figure out whose car is for the library versus the football game? So what we're working on now, because it is a liability concern, she's correct, is we're going to do something similar to what we did on Gateway, which is we're hoping to team up with the school and build a nice ornamental fence that will make it very inconvenient for anybody that wants to go to a sporting event to park in the library parking lot. They'll have to walk almost, the same distance they would if they just parked in the normal parking lot. And we hope that helps alleviate the problem. And then on the recycling center is a great point. The school district, and we're working out another piece of property that's adjacent to the entryway to 12 Bridges, where the school district seems open to letting us use that land to pave and create a separate recycling center there.
That's where they're hoping to do an aquatic center one day.
Yeah, it's like a little kind of oval shaped piece of property right when you enter the high school area. If you're coming into the high school, it'd be on your right hand side.
Okay, Gwen, I think you had one more hand raised.
I did. They put their hand down. So just if you'd like to make a comment. Okay, Brenda, please go ahead. Brenda, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good evening. I was shocked and suspect many of our residents would be too, to see that a COVID emergency is still on place on the city's website, 3 years and 6 months after it went into effect. Tonight, I'm proposing the City Council would officially end the City of Lincoln's emergency proclamation. If the information on the city's website is inaccurate and the emergency has already been officially ended, I ask that the website be updated immediately to accurately reflect that no emergency order is in place. Also, the city's website states that there is a masking requirement and links to CDPH documentation. And the link confirms that there is no requirement, so Lincoln's site is inaccurate and creates confusion. I have been unable to find a way to search public documents on the website, similar to searching for a fictitious business name on Placer counties. When I enter emergency into the search field, it populates links for pages of emergency preparedness, fire, police, etc., in addition to the original documentation. So I just haven't been able to find a document reflecting an end to the emergency proclamation. If the information on the website is accurate, there are many reasons to approve the end of the emergency, such as the state of California's ended on February 28th and the federal government's ended on May 11th. Additionally, COVID-19 has transitioned from a pandemic to an endemic disease, meaning that it is a constant presence in the community. We have seen that coronavirus is highly mutagenic, experiencing 20+ variants since COVID first came to the US over 3 years ago, and it likely will be around long after anyone today alive has passed. If the emergency is still in effect, I hope this is a horrible error of omission rather than intent. In any case, let's get the city's website updated to reflect an already officially ended emergency order, or correct the error and display our recognition that there's no need for an emergency now or in the future related to COVID-19.
Thank you for that, Brenda. We did, in fact, end that state of emergency quite a while ago. And I personally was unaware that that was still up on the website. So we'll get staff on that ASAP.
Thank you.
You bet. Else?
No other hands are raised, Mayor.
All right. In that case, we'll go ahead and close public comment. We've already got our requests for pulling items on the consent agenda, so I will accept a motion on the remainder of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion, Andreatta, second, Brown. Go ahead, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Andriotta.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. Move on to item 8B, pulled at staff's request.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to talk about this a little bit because it's a potentially very important large project. One of the goals the city council has, I believe on previous strategic plans and certainly on this one, has been that it's sort of widely acknowledged that this city council space we are in now is insufficient now and will definitely be insufficient as the city continues to grow. And so when this building was built, there was a concept that was always part of the plan. It just wasn't carried out at the time, probably because of funding constraints, to change the city council chambers from this space to the first floor. In fact, the offices where Christine and I work. And for a variety of reasons. So security reasons, it provides more seating area for the community. It is right at ground floor, so the access is much easier, et cetera. And with that, it means that we have to rearrange a number of different departments, kind of like musical chairs. So as we started to scope that project, one of the things that was made really clear to me by engineering is that the nature of this work, our capital department is skilled, very skilled at what we would call standard CIP type projects, roadway improvements, traffic improvements, parks improvements, those kinds of things. When you get into buildings, and especially public buildings where we have, thousands of visitors a week here, the level of expertise you need to make sure that we have sufficient office space in other areas for departments that are moving, such as ours, as well as making sure that the council chambers is designed in such a way that it's something that the community can be very proud of and is a good space to use for years. Necessitated us to look into hiring a project management firm. In this case, it's CSG, who does a lot of work with us in other areas, to run that project from beginning to essentially end. So to include getting the right types of architects to design the project appropriately. And the main reason I pulled it is I wanted to explain that there's multiple off ramps that it may be that we never even satisfy the totality of half of this contract, because we may get to the first 25% and the architect who does some preliminary design for us says the project is X number of $1 million and it's just simply more than we can afford or are willing to spend. But we can't know that information until somebody actually does the work to design it. And so I wanted to kind of explain that. And I don't know, Travis, if there's some additional kind of color you wanted to add to that.
No, I think that was perfect. I mean, like Sean said, the scope of these types of projects are just exponentially different than our standard heavy civil type projects that, I mean, let's say a typical roadway or utility replacement might have 100 bid items, and throughout the course of construction, you have 20 RFIs. On projects like this, you're in the, thousands of items. And I just got done with a $4 million TI for a police station that I think we're on RFI number 900. It's just a completely different animal than what my staff traditionally does. To further Sean's point, we even have it broken down in the RFP and in the response from CSG, the different off ramps. And one of them is get us through the conceptual, get a budget set, get an architect on staff, but not, or under contract, but not engage them. It's less than a third of this contract that we're looking for. And it's very clear so that we can, with these sort of milestone type projects or contracts, that we can very easily terminate it at a certain point. So,
because the alternative is we have to go based on a really simplistic view of per square foot build cost, which we can pull from other public agencies that have built something, but it's really apples and oranges. It all depends on what they're doing, where they're doing it, how they're doing it. And so if council wants an educated decision on what is the appropriate amount of investment to build this, then I think this is the way to do it.
All right, questions from the council? I think you're right, Sean. We can look towards Elk Grove, who did a very similar redo, and get a general sense of it. But if we're serious about this, this is the path that I think is appropriate as well. Any member of the public wishing to comment on this item? Mr. Chapman.
Byron Chapman, excuse me, Mayor, council members, city staff, and those at home, and certainly those who took the time to come here this evening. A couple of things I wanted to cover as well. In going over the packet, it looks like the city has roughly $725,000 in which to do all of this. You've covered most of it, I believe, and I appreciate it, but we're looking at $223,480 in order just to find out and have them go through and where we are. And the simple math is, yeah, it's about a third of the amount of money that you have set aside in order to do this. The one big thing that stood out for me, not just the dollar amount, but on this particular one, and I know it's been described as it's a fish out of water, so to speak. But in the document for the city, it did point out that the fact that there's a contingency of, I think it's 12.5% in the event something comes out that's unforeseen. For years, I'm certainly an advocate. I truly have difficulty even with the 10% that we give contracts to people. Predominantly, my view is 5%. And my rationale behind it is this: when you are paying a consultant or someone to do the work, you're paying someone who should know the business and know the work. And if they don't know the work, then if they go beyond that, it's kind of an incentive, at least in order to make sure that they know what they're going to do and what they're bidding on, as opposed to, hey, I've got another $35,000 here that I can play with. I'm not saying that anyone is going to do that, but it certainly allows that to possibly happen. Also in the packet, I did read that one of the elements, and I understand why, that the dais would be raised in that. And I understand why, the logistics and that sort of thing. Just want to cover it. It's just one of the things that I do, is I want to make sure too that the dais is set up so that it is accessible for the disabled. I'm not throwing my hat in the ring or anything like that, but I am saying that you really need to have that built into it. I'm sure you will be, but sometimes it's just worth mentioning. So
That is actually, well, without a doubt, we should be doing that. We're not to that stage yet, but without a doubt, we should be doing that. But taking this chamber down to the first floor, having multiple ingress and egress points in the case of an emergency is one of the main reasons in my mind that we're doing this. Right now, there's one way in, one way out.
oh,
And
absolutely.
if there's a fire and that elevator goes down, a whole bunch of us are carrying you down the stairs. And I
Yeah.
think you'd prefer to be able to make your own way out.
Well, sometimes probably going push, but we won't talk about that. The last thing too, on the room itself, is there any kind of conception? I wouldn't blame you if you didn't have that figure. We know pretty much what the audience proportion is here. Is that going to be applicable to the area that we're looking at, or is that just something we haven't covered yet?
I don't think we know yet, to be honest,
Thank you.
unless you've taken a look. The old drawings that were based on the Elk Grove model would have increased. What are we looking at here? About 50 seats? Would have increased it a little bit.
Travis walked it out when we were thinking this through. We think that the total floor area, which would be proportionate to additional seating area, would increase by 35 to 40%, just depending on how we set it up. But it does other things. Like, for example, one of the ideas is Christine's office, which is tucked way to the back, would be the IT room where your video audio people, instead of being in that room, will see what's happening in real time. There's security components for both the public and safety and council that would be working in. Mr. Chapman mentioned a couple things that reminded me I need to clarify. So the budget that's listed on the agenda is the professional services budget only for this project, not the construction budget. When we tried to calculate what we thought it would cost for on a per square foot basis, we were in, well, it was originally budgeted, I think, for around $2 million. It's well double that at this point with construction cost.
So that's for the entire city hall redo. It's not
Correct.
just for the council.
Correct.
chamber.
Yes. And so his point on contingency, I understand it and to some degree agree with it. But the problem is that in this instance, the contingency isn't so much so that the consultant can add cost because it's there and they know it. It's much more likely that we change scope and we say, hey, we didn't know we needed to change this IT closet, for example. Can you add that to your, because you change one little thing in this building and you change a few other things, kind of like a leaky ship, right? We will swallow up the remainder of that professional services budget likely on architect services alone.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
We do have a hand. Lena, please go ahead.
Good evening. I just want to mention that I went through all the material and drawings and such, and I didn't see anything for overflow people. There are times when you have more than 50 people attend. I know it's not very often, but it does happen. So I just want to mention that. Thank you.
And that'd be real simple, Lena. You just go to that first floor meeting room, the way we do right now. As an overflow room, we'd have monitors in there for people to be able to watch.
It's really better because now if you have overflow, we don't have to take public comment. If we're down there, we don't have to take public comment via Zoom. They can walk 5 seconds down and enter the chambers. Oh, and also the rotunda, it would face out to the rotunda, so it provides a lot of overflow out there, actually, now I think about it.
Not unlike the Board of Supervisors chamber, the domes. So, all right, one last chance. Anyone wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back up here. Anyone wishing to make a motion?
I move approval.
I'll second.
I have a motion, Andriata, second, Brown. Go ahead.
Yes, Councilmember Andriana.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skent.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. With that, we moved on to item 8C. Mr. Chapman, you requested this be pulled. Do you need a brief presentation or do you just have a few questions? Okay, and Araceli is not.
Yeah, I think we're gonna go to Travis on this one.
Surprise, Travis.
Yeah, didn't have it pulled up, but 8C is for the approval of plans and specs for what we call Jimenez Park Phase 3. We tied a parking lot project into this, but this is really giving us authorization to bid out. It's going to be a new lit soccer field. It's going to be a parking lot. It's going to be 16 by 20 covered picnic area, a bunch of flat work, concrete work, walkways, stuff like that. So it's really the next stage of the Jimenez Park improvements. It's not getting to the ball fields yet. That'll be in future phases. But it's, again, the soccer fields, walkways, paving the parking lot that's currently a dirt lot in front of the Lincoln Crossing.
Mr. Chapman, do you need more than that?
Once again, Byron Chapman, 12 Bridges area. Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff. The reason I just wanted to get the background and where we're going, and I looked over the data. I know that funds have been collected as they are when we get developers coming in here. My big question is, and I have somewhat of an answer, but I'd like to hear, at what point do we, the city, get too many parks and now we have to keep paying, excuse me, and keep paying and keep paying. McBean Park, Joyner Park, 2 large facilities. I realize that people want a small park close to their area, but for those people that go to McBean, I don't know of anybody. I'm not standing on a street corner taking an audit, but I've never really heard anyone when we talk about parks and things that one, we don't have enough. And I'm really looking at trying to maybe slow down this freight train on, it isn't the fact that we have the funds to build it. My concern is how many do we have out there that we have to maintain and continue? And that's my biggest concern on this. So thank you.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Sean, correct me if I'm wrong. We're at 20 now.
Excuse me,
20 parks?
Yeah, I think that's correct. And I actually agree with Mr. Chapman. Like financially, I agree with him. But one of the things that we hear pretty consistently is that our park space is at least, I wouldn't say insufficient, but it's not to the level where much of the feedback we get is that we need more ball fields, more. And there is a cost to that. That is one of the reasons why a park like Jimenez, a park like Foskett, a park like McBean, and future Bella Breeze are what we would classify as regional parks. And so they fall into the new 2018 to CFD program, which all new development is paying a specific amount per home to maintain those regional facilities. But he's not wrong that certainly every park you build is a forever commitment to maintain.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think I think what is happening for us though in the smaller parks is as we try to move towards housing affordability, which typically means a smaller lot size, now you have nowhere for those families to gather to play. And these neighborhood parks begin to take the place of that gathering spot for the neighborhood. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think there's a need.
I'd encourage people to go check out on a weekend, go to Aitken Park, which is one of our newest built ones. Depending on what time you go, you see that in real time, people using that space as a yard, essentially.
Yeah, you absolutely do. Nathan Dubin Park is right over by me. There are, on weekends, there are times when I've had to consider parking the car and walking home because that park is so well used. All right, anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
Back up here for any questions? Anyone wish to make a motion? I'll move. Anyone? Motion Brown, second Carlson. Go ahead.
Yes, Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. That completes our consent agenda. We move on to public hearings. Item 9A, conduct a public hearing and waive the full reading and introduce by title only ordinance number 1068B, approving a development agreement between the City of Lincoln and Green SRP Owner LLC, Villas at 12 Bridges Property LLC, LGI Homes, California LLC, Gen California 22 LLC, KB Home Sacramento, Inc., Century Communities of California LLC, relative to the development of approximately 74 acres of residentially zoned property within the 12 Bridges plan area and make the finding that the ordinance is exempt from further environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. Christine.
Thank you, Mayor. And actually, Christian Svensk is going to be presenting this item to you this evening.
Thanks, Christine. Yeah, happy to pick up the baton on this team effort. Yeah, so you pretty much read the entire staff report in the intro, but no, it's the item before you is an ordinance approving the new DA between the city and the 6 developers named in that staff report. They control 74 acres of high density residential area in the 12 Bridges plan. Just for background, the original DA was adopted in April of 1998 and was set to expire in April of 2023 after getting a 5-year extension in 2018. And then last March, the council approved a 6-month extension to the DA for this high density area, which then expires next month. This extension was intended to provide time to negotiate a new DA with the developers, which staff undertook. If the existing DA does expire next month, the credits would no longer remain as the city's liabilities. And as such, the council must find that retaining these credits on our books supports a public benefit. The subject area contains 841 units of high density achievable housing, which is a much needed product type in Lincoln. The extension of these credits will help to facilitate the creation of this high density housing and in turn help the city meet its RHNA, regional housing needs allocation goals. Without this extension, these projects may not be financially viable. So as such, staff does believe the council can find that the new DA does serve an important public benefit to the city. And additionally, this DA differs from the existing DA in several key areas that also are advantageous to the city. The DA is specifically limited to these high density properties. The term is for 5 years this time, not 20 or longer, with no automatic options to extend. So we're hoping that this 5-year will prompt developers to move on these properties. At the termination of that agreement, of this agreement, all the developer fee credits would expire. The credits are only applicable in the 12 Bridges area. The agreement does convert the PFE credits from EDUs to a dollar equivalent, which is much easier for staff to track. And the city will also gain $200,000 in admin fees to cover the cost of tracking these credits. Lastly, these credits may be pooled with the exception of the critical component of the sewer fee. So the fiscal impact is obviously that the city will carry this financial liability forward. Developers, however, will comply with the district assessments and CFD requirements, which do obviously offset the cost of services, city services. So staff does recommend that the council approve this ordinance establishing a DA between the city of Lincoln and those developers named in the staff report. And then also find the ordinance exempt from CEQA. And with that, staff is open for questions.
All right, thank you, Christian. That was very helpful. Before I go to the public, are there any questions or comments from the council? Right. I'll go ahead and go to the public hearing just for the benefit of those of you in the audience. We treat this a little differently than normal public comments. You are actually testifying on the record, and should, in the eventuality this goes to court or any number of things, this is official testimony. So it's not really meant to be a question and answer type of period. Is that fair? You bet. So with that, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify on this matter, if you could please come to the podium. Mr. Chapman.
Once again, Byron Chapman. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff. The city, for as long as I've been here, and I think other cities run into this as well, is it being high density units. I want to say my biggest concern is of these 841, how many of these are going to address the low income housing, senior housing? If it's a high density scenario, I believe that the city is still having difficulty trying to get up to those types of low income and senior housing. Is there anything that could happen in order to make, my biggest concern is that these, let's say they are good and they do bill out, but I don't see anything at this point as to how any commitment made in order for this to happen. If we don't, we're just kicking the can down the road again. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Anyone else wishing to testify on this matter? Online, Gwen? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Don, did you want to address that?
Yeah, so I think Christine and I would both say that when we were originally approached about this, this extension request, our first answer was no. With that said, the tone and type of development that now is occurring in Village 27B, which is that area of 12 Bridges, has changed quite a bit just in the last 5 years, from what originally was sort of a real standard single family kind of setup to something that's a bit more dense. And in some cases, as you know, you just proved something separate, actual real affordable housing complex. And so looking at it from that lens, and also in making sure that this is simply a 5-year agreement. And look, we've talked about this all the time. Could a future council change their mind? I guess so. But we tried to make it really clear that at least as long as we're here, our recommendation is that you get through these credits within the next 5-year period. And if you don't, then that's it. But our concern was more that we have at least 2, if not 3, really neat, diverse, affordable housing kind of products that we do not see in Lincoln. We have a single family home for rent project, which you never see those, with a community facility and HOA that takes care of all of the landscaping. And then we have our apartment project, which again, talked about it last time. It's been 30 odd years since we've had anything like that. And we didn't want to lose those opportunities over what amounts to a relatively small amount of credits compared to how much building we have in Lincoln on a regular basis.
Good, thank you. Questions or comments?
I have a question. Okay, so you just mentioned the build to rent. Is that the same one that we did groundbreaking on and they never started building or?
Same one, and it is moving forward. I'm
Okay.
told. Yes.
You want to give your shovel back?
No. Well, it just confused me because he said you never see those. And I'm like, but we did a groundbreaking and that we have one, but okay. All right. Okay, so I guess my other question was, and you kind of answered it, but when Christian said achievable or attainable housing, I get really twitchy when I hear that because where they're building these things, people say that, and then they end up being $600,000 and $700,000, $800,000 homes. And we have enough of that, right? And so I believe in building attainable, affordable housing. I'm not a big fan of the high density. I think we're cramming in. I think 12 Bridges already has several areas that are super dense. And I'm just not a fan of it. I don't like it. I'm not saying I'm not going to vote for it. I don't know yet, but you answered my question about the achievable and the attainable. I just want to make sure that we don't get bait and switch, like that they say that and then they come back later and they say, oh, well, we're not doing that, right? That's bold. I don't like that.
I think we actually just had the opposite happen. with
Yeah.
The apartment.
Well, the
project,
apartment,
right?
yes.
With
No, the
market
apartment
rate
was,
analysis.
the apartment was great. I love that. Yes.
It's a really good point. I think it would be complex for us to absolutely hedge against that, but when the council rezoned that area that made the density significantly higher than the standard single family zoning, you kind of drew the development community into a smaller box there, because even if they wanted to reverse course and do something else, they still have to build a product that's much more dense and therefore will be by its nature less expensive than
Right.
a 7,000 square foot lot.
Okay, here's my other question. Projecting out a little bit. And I realize we may not be able to answer the question. And we already did the groundbreaking on the Altair, with the house's front. So the plan was already in place. But we hear all the time about how bad the traffic is over there for John Adams and all of that. And this is just gonna exacerbate that. And so my question is, how do we plan on addressing that?
Travis, can you share a little bit about some triggers that may be triggered as a result of these, or is there other ones?
He
that
says
you can help?
no.
Well, let me jump in. Correct me if I'm wrong. We actually will have fewer units when the entirety of 12 Bridges is completed than original traffic studies expected.
Correct.
And
This
so while
is,
we might have some hotspots like John Adams, overall, we actually have fewer inputs into the
That's
system.
good to know.
this is fewer than the original 12 Bridges EIR and traffic study accounted for. However, we don't have any currently planned city-led, whether it's onto Joyner or on Belle Breeze or another connection to 12 Bridges. There's no additional traffic impacts or traffic improvement projects.
There's things that are on the periphery, so for example, there's an eventual Joyner project leading up that way. There's also the commercial component of
Which is
12 Bridges.
widening
Right.
East Joyner Parkway to 4 lanes.
Right. And then there's a commercial project along 12 Bridges immediately to the south of this whole area that, by the nature of the commercial project, will have to create sort of pathways. So one of the problems with the traffic in John Adams right now is essentially that there's really only two ways to get in and out. And as the remainder of this area develops, there will inevitably be other options for people. And we're constantly working with John Adams, and I have to hand it to them. They really have tried a variety of different things to try to soften this. And I don't want to speak for them, but I know they've even looked into purchasing some adjacent property to try to build additional staging and parking. So we'll report back.
All right.
Okay, thank you for that.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah. comments. The product set in these villages is all of the products set can be said to be attainable because they are high density. On top of that, we do have the apartment building, which is almost a quarter of the total number of units is in the apartment building, which is affordable housing. It is, when I moved here and looked at the general plan and the 12 Bridges specific plan before I bought my house, because I wanted to know what was around me going to be. There were a lot of apartment buildings and a lot of high rise that was planned for 12 Bridges. So I don't know the numbers, but there's got to be 10% less, close to 10% less homes than was in that part of the specific plan.
Well, that would jive with maybe what Travis is saying in terms of a reduction of traffic or units, but I don't know
Yeah,
the
that's-
history on that. But yeah, I would just say to plug that high density, we're kind of doing step one, which is make it high density. Because that's what you need to make them. In retaining that high density, we are providing that ability to have a product that comes in that is achievable.
Yeah.
So.
And again, the product set is a way to enable people like the rentals, people to get in a home as a starter home that they can then buy, grow, build, drive our tax base up, and eventually we'll be in great shape. So I just wanted to say that, and I believe, well, we know that the use of the extension of the credits was necessary to make the apartment buildings work and be affordable and not just so.
Agreed.
I agree.
Any other comments before we accept a motion? I do want to say that I know that this negotiation was not easy. And council very much appreciates the effort. With that, I'll accept a motion.
I move.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion. Lawrenson, second Carlson.
Yes, Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Certainly.
Councilmember Andriana,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. Move on to 9B, conduct a public hearing and waive the full reading and introduce by title only. Ordinance number 1069B, adding chapter 9.50 to Title 9 of the Lincoln Municipal Code, prohibiting syringe exchange programs from operating in the city of Lincoln, and finding and determining ordinance is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15061B3 and 15378. Christine.
Quite a mouthful. My staff report will be relatively brief. As council recalls, last week we held a special meeting in order for you to adopt an urgency ordinance out of concern that this syringe exchange program that has petitioned the state of California in order to do business and distribute over 200,000 needles in South Placer County. And so we took action, or council took action on an urgency basis to put in effect an immediate ban. That immediate ban only lasts for 45 days. So in order to keep that ban in place, this regular ordinance at a regular council meeting is necessary and a second read. We will be coming forward with a renewal of that urgency ordinance because unfortunately, by the time we do the second read and the 30 days lapses before it actually becomes effective, there is a gap, a window of about a week or so where there would be no ordinance in effect banning these syringe exchange programs. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but we had a very in-depth conversation at our meeting last week And Chief provided us with a lot of good information that was used to supplement in the staff report.
Thank you, Christine. Any questions or comments?
Nope.
I have a question. This in no way, because of the warehouses club, no way affects the existing syringe exchange that happens at a pharmacy.
Correct. That is California
Can't be
state law.
construed.
That is California state law. And so any individual who has a dirty needle and wishes to go to a pharmacy can turn in that dirty needle. It will be disposed of in a sharps container and they will be given a clean needle, no questions asked. That was one of the major concerns with this needle exchange program, as was brought up to council at our last meeting, is that there was no checks or balances. There wasn't a requirement that there was a one-for-one exchange. There wasn't a requirement that they even necessarily be disposed of safely, when and where they could be disposed of. And so that is why we came forward with this ban, which is also almost identical to what some of our sister jurisdictions have done, including Rockland and Loomis and also Placer County earlier today.
My comment was, I absolutely don't want the same program here, but I want to make sure that it doesn't affect the other programs that might be operating professionally, correctly, with checks and balances.
I think that's appropriate. Anyone else? If not, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify on this matter? Sorry, Dan. Little loud. Being no one in the room, anyone?
No
online?
hands are raised,
I
Mayor.
will quietly close the public hearing. Bring it back up here for a motion.
Okay, I move we approve.
A second.
Motion Andriotta, second Brown.
Yes, Councilmember Andriotta.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskin.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
And Mayor Joyner.
Yes. Moving on to item 9C, conduct a public hearing and adopt resolution 2023-179, certifying that the 2012 Village One Specific Plan Environmental Impact Report, EIR, oh boy, SCH number 20101020018, as revised by the supplement to the EIR, adequately addresses the environmental impacts of the Village One Specific Plan with the proposed amendments and revise the findings of fact and the revised mitigation monitoring program. Adopt resolution 2023-108, approving the Village One Specific Plan Amendment SPA, and for waive full reading and introduced by title only ordinance 1070B, approving revisions to the general development plan.
Good evening, Mayor, and the rest of the council, Mel Pavlinas. Item 9C for you tonight is a Village One Specific Plan Amendment, as recommended for approval by the Plan Commission to your council. Just a quick housekeeping items for you tonight. Brief PowerPoint presentation, which summarizes the project information that's already been provided to your council and to the public. Tag teaming with me tonight, this presentation is Adrian Graham and Associates, E.G. Graham of E.G. Graham and Associates. So she's on-call consultant for the project on this project. She's been on this project for at least 4 or 5 years, a lot longer than I have. So she's been a great asset in helping me out in getting this across the finish line, hopefully tonight. One item of note is that we did receive one public comment inviting, which I forwarded to the city clerk and forwarded to you. So hopefully you had a chance to read over that. And lastly, we did provide a staff memo. If hopefully you received that as well, but it's just some minor edits that we noticed after the printing of the staff report, just minor edits, text edits, and some clarifications. So yeah, for the record, that's I wanted to acknowledge that as well. So this is the PowerPoint, and featuring here is the location of the proposed revisions or amendment to the SPA to the Village One area. Just a quick recap of what took place back on the 16th of November. The Plan Commission considered the project, public hearing, comments and testimonies at that hearing, And at the end of the public hearing, recommended approval of the project to York City Council with a 6-0 vote. Certifying the supplement to the EIR, adoption of the Village One SPA, and adoption of the GDP as revised in coordination with the changes to the Village One SPA. Just a brief history on the Village One plan area. Make sure I have the right pointer here. In red is the entire Village One plan area, northeast corner of the city boundary. 193 bisects the project into two. As it goes into the city, going westbound on 193, it becomes McBean Park Drive, as you all know. There's other roads that leads into the project area, including Ferrari Ranch Road, which you'll see here in a few minutes, and Oak Tree Lane as well. Slide showing, kind of zooming in more into the project area. Again, the area in yellow hash marks is the Village One area. Ferrari Ranch Road borders, touches the plan area on the west side, northwest side. Oak Tree Lane comes down at the intersection with McBean Park Drive. Stardust Lane is over here, because that's the city boundary as well. 193, of course, outside of McBean Park Drive is going into the county or to the state highway system. Sierra College Boulevard is right here. And also on this one, and I'll show another slide of this that's important, is that there are development happening currently in the plan area. You have Esplanade, you have Turkey Creek, Waterfront was a mixed-use development that was approved last October of last year. So that's also right there at the corner of Oak Tree Lane and McBean Park Drive. Hidden Hills is on the bottom left corner or southwest corner of the plan area. So there are developments in accordance with the Village One plan area, Village One plan. And of course, another outside of that is this Toll Bridges, Sun City, Lincoln. Some summary of what was approved, what Village One consists of, about close to 5,700 dwelling units. Right there. It was adopted back in 2012, back in November. Close to about 170,000 square feet of commercial, almost 100 acres of parkland, almost about 400 acres of oak, woodlands, open space, and trails, and 2 potential school sites in the area. The adoption of the plan also was supported by a certified environmental impact report. I'm going to highlight one aspect here of the slide. Again, for orientation's sake, Ferrari Ranch Road borders on the west side. Oak Tree Lane, as you can tell, it goes south off of 193 on McBean Park Drive, and goes, as adopted, it goes southeasterly to Sierra College Drive, down to the southeast side there. And again, you have McBean Park Drive 193 and Sierra College at that corner right there, and going southbound. Another, again, this is more a repetition of what the previous slide showing, again, developments occurring in the plan area. You have Epic subdivision on the north area, Esplanade, Waterfront, Turkey Creek, and Hidden Hills. So I just want to kind of point that out again. So what's being proposed and what was approved by the Plan Commission are the following. The applicant here is Lake Development LLC, care of 3G Design Group. The first component of the project is the Village One SPA, is that the realignment of Oak Tree Lane, as I mentioned before. Oak Tree Lane is this road right here. And I'm going to fast forward here shortly. So the first item of that's being changed is the realignment of Oak Tree Lane, and you'll see this in the next slide here. And revisions to the land use map excuse me, some certain land use designations were revised and they were affected by, sorry, they were affected by the changes as a result of this realignment. The GDP will also change, again, just reflecting the modified yard setbacks and modified minimum lot sizes. Again, as land use changes, some standards need to be changed to accommodate the density contemplated, and so those are all changes to the general development plan. There are other revisions that were being considered here, including updates to the cross sections, road cross sections, elimination of option for reclaimed water, and the phasing plan were also modified to accommodate, again, the changes that took place as a result of realignment and the land use changes that took place as a result. So just clean up, just corresponding to those changes, additional revisions were conducted to make sure that everything works out accordingly based on the changes considered here. One note to be, I want to highlight is that the proposed changes only affects the south side of McBean Park Drive. The rest of north side of McBean Park Drive, that portion of the plan area is not affected by this. So anything, let me show you here. Anything that change, anything that's highlighted in black, other areas that would change. And actually, I kind of went over this really quick here. So these are the eliminated southeasterly connection, which is the connection before that went southeasterly is now being rerouted, looping back onto South McBean Park Drive, as shown in this map. Again, Oak Tree Lane is now being diverted to the north. There is, in the future, there will be some connections, but within the subdivisions over here, but the main drag, the main Oak Tree Lane will be diverted and looping back to the north. That's the big change that happened. Shown here is the table of the land use changes, identifying all the various use designations in the plan area, including mixed use and residential, open space trails, parks and recreation, roadways. It's a comparison of the adopted plan in acreages and versus what's changed. And this is delta. There's some areas went down, the land use areas went down, but there were also gains in those areas, like 28 acres of open space trails have now been redesignated as open space and trails. Parks and recreation land use is also changed, but by a small amount, but nevertheless, it's still a change. Roadways, of course, were modified because now instead of going southeasterly the long way, it's being looped back onto McBean Park Drive to the north. And there's also some reduction in the landscape corridors. So this is a good summary of what changes with regards to land uses. The amount of residential dwelling units overall actually decreased as a result of this change. It went from 5,639 to 5,610. So that's an important aspect of the project. So it's lesser impact overall with this SPA proposed to your council. As I mentioned earlier, other changes to the proposed project is that the GDP, or General Development Plan, is the zoning code for the specific plan. So that is the main code or document that we would go off of to ensure that standards are adhered to by development. So those changes that have been done in that GDP. Exhibits also were changed to correspond to the changes in the specific plan regarding land uses, and those exhibits that are affected are changed accordingly. Of note, the village low density residential designation has been changed, especially the ones that are adjacent to the county lands. Setbacks were increased to 20 feet, and the minimum lot size also increased from 4,500 to about 7,150. Other changes that's identified in the, for this project, park plan credits went up. Elimination of option for reclaimed water. Some of the text in the specific plan text did change, just again, minor changes, just cleanup for formatting and text changes have occurred. The phasing plan, as a result of the changes that occurred, that had to be updated to make sure that it still it follows the strategic development of the plan. And as I mentioned earlier, our roadway cross sections to ensure that the development of the roads that would serve the development have been revised to accommodate the appropriate sizes to accommodate traffic internally and as well as the main arterial roads serving the area. I'm going to hand it off to Adrian here for the rest of the slides.
Good evening. My name is Adrienne Graham, as Mel indicated, and I'm going to talk about the environmental review that we prepared for the specific plan amendments. As Mel indicated, when this Village One specific plan was originally adopted, there was a draft an EIR that was prepared that analyzed the full range of environmental effects. Under CEQA, when changes are proposed to a project, an adopted project, the city is obligated to determine whether or not those changes could result in new significant impacts or impacts that are substantially more severe than were identified in the original EIR. In this case, we determined that there was one area where significant impacts would be made more severe, and that had to do with traffic noise. Explain a little bit more about that in a moment. Because of that increased impact, which is significant and unavoidable, we needed to do a supplemental EIR. The supplement focuses on that impact in traffic noise, but it also contains explanations of why it is that other impacts would not be substantially more severe as a result of the proposed amendments. And that is in large part because, as Mel indicated, there's a reduction in the total number of units. There's also an increase in the amount of open space, which means that there's less land that's being disturbed by development. And one of the things that's not part of the amendments, but that has occurred, is that you have age-restricted units now up in the Esplanade Turkey Creek project, and that results in less traffic overall for the specific plan as a whole. As required by CEQA, the draft supplemental EIR was circulated for 45 days for public and agency review. We received one agency letter from the Water Board and 2 letters from individuals. We then prepared a final supplement that included responses to all the comments that were received and also the revisions to a mitigation monitoring program. As I said, we did identify some additional traffic noise impacts, and we also included mitigation for those impacts. And also required by CEQA, anytime you do a specific plan amendment and or an EIR, the city's obligated to request of the local tribes if they want to consult on the impacts of the project. The city notified 4 tribes of the proposed project and asked if they wanted to consult. One tribe, United Auburn Indian Community, followed up on that, and the city entered into consultation with them. As a result of that, there were revisions made to the mitigation measures that address archaeological resources. Those mitigation measures have been brought more up to date, more in keeping with the current practices, and also have been revised to better address tribal cultural resources and the concerns of the tribe. So it didn't change any of the impacts related to archaeological or tribal resources, particularly since we're actually disturbing less ground, but the mitigation measures are more effective. So the mitigation monitoring plan, as part of your package, and it has been revised to include both the traffic noise mitigation measures that were added, as well as the revisions to the cultural resource mitigation measures. With respect to traffic, one of the effects of the looping of Oak Tree Lane that Mel described is that you redirect traffic that would have previously gone down to Sierra College Boulevard, now loops up to McBean Park Drive, SR 193. And as a result, people who want to go onto Sierra College Boulevard are now going down 193, and you've got increased traffic levels on that segment of 193 west of Sierra College Boulevard, basically between Oak Tree Lane and Sierra College Boulevard, and then also on Sierra College itself, south of 193. And those that redistribution of traffic was substantial enough that it triggered some noise impacts. And under existing conditions for one segment and cumulative for another. So we've added mitigation, essentially the same mitigation that was already required for some other segments that would have been affected under the adopted project. And that is to use rubberized asphalt or some other form of pavement that would reduce sound. You can actually get a pretty substantial reduction in noise, traffic noise from that kind of paving. However, because those segments that are affected are outside of the city's jurisdiction, city cannot compel the county, for example, to use that kind of asphalt. And so we've concluded that's a significant unavoidable impact. So in conclusion, the original EIR, as supplemented by the supplemental EIR, adequately addresses the impacts of the project, including those impacts that would occur if the project is amended as proposed. So therefore, staff I should say, in addition to that, we looked at whether or not the changes to the project would affect the Village One specifics plans consistency with the county general plan and other planning documents, and concluded that in fact it would not, that the project would remain consistent. Therefore, staff recommends that City Council conduct a public hearing to receive the Planning Commission recommendations, testimony concerning the project, and that at the close of the hearing that you adopt the resolutions and ordinance which provide for certification of the EIR as supplemented, and adoption of the findings of fact, statement of overriding considerations, and mitigation monitoring program, and then approve the specific plan amendments and the revisions to the general development plan. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Right. It was a very thorough report. I appreciate it very much. I think I'll go to council first for questions, then to the public, and then back up for final comments.
I have one question. No. Okay, I'm a little confused on the change for Oak Tree Lane. So where it is right now, it's going to punch across, right? And then you guys said that instead of going to Sierra College, it's going to loop back around to McBean Park 193. That I'm not picturing that. Can you go back to that and show me what you're talking about?
Yeah, let me get to that slide here. This is probably the best slide that we have. So Oak Tree Lane as it exists, and it loops back up to the north, to the east, and then to the north. That's Stardust Lane.
Oh, okay, I see. It's coming out way far down on the other end, but okay, I gotcha.
Wait, yeah, it is, yeah.
Okay. I wrote down my question because you said it fast and I missed it. Is Stardust Lane the boundary, the cutoff of our, what's the cutoff of our city limit?
It is Stardust.
It is Stardust. That's what I thought. Okay.
I made a mistake. The
Okay.
Stardust is right here.
Yeah. Okay.
And then Oak Tree Lane, how far back? About 1,000 feet from that Stardust
Okay.
Lane intersection. To the
Okay.
west is where it connects, where it loops. Connects back onto.
I
Green
gotcha.
Park Drive.
Okay.
It
Okay.
swings down all the way under that blue square.
Yeah.
And then
And it goes
swings
all the way
up. You
back
see
around.
that little sliver between the yellows
Mm-hmm.
is where it reconnects.
Okay. Right.
And have
I
we
see. Okay.
foreclosed any future possibility of connecting to Sierra College? We have Tony shaking his head, yes.
Good question.
Absent a new annexation, right?
Yeah.
And to be clear, Oak Tree Lane, it is still going to go across, right? Still going to punch across and to the other side?
To the north side,
Yes.
there are improvements happening now. It's, of course, it's a requirement of the development that's occurring there. But yeah, it is going to punch through.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, council members, it's Lindy Childers, engineering manager. To clarify, the location of the new connection with Oak Tree Lane and McBean, it will be directly across the street from the easternmost entry to Turkey Creek Estates. So those two streets will line across McBean Park Drive from each other. Does that make sense?
It does. And actually, if I push out on the map he's showing us, you can see the gated entrances aligning with each of those. All right, that's useful. Thank you. All right. Any further questions?
Not right now, no, thanks.
I have a question. This area is south of 193. It includes the Hidden Hills area, which is the area that's impacted by the former Titan site and the contamination and remediation. What effect does that have on the environmental impact report?
I'll have Adrian respond to that.
Okay, thank you.
So when the environmental impact report was prepared in 2012, there was quite a bit of information available regarding the Titan site. And there's mitigation, pretty extensive mitigation in that document that addresses what can and can't be done and prior to remediation of that site. My recollection is that it doesn't actually flow under Hidden Hills, that area is not affected, but when Hidden Hills was under consideration, they would have had to do a phase 1 site assessment and basically confirm that they didn't have any issues related to any kind of hazardous materials due to past uses. In addition to that, the groundwater plume, where the things that some of the things that are included in that EIR mitigation measures include things like not doing groundwater withdrawals that could affect the plume or could affect construction workers, being planning for those kinds of activities so that you don't either adversely affect the plume and remediation activities or expose people to potential contamination.
Okay, since then, we found out some discrepancies about the plume. I mean, obviously the Army Corps of Engineers was claiming that it wasn't moving, and of course it has moved. I'm not really sure that Hidden Hills is an area that's not going to be affected. So has that been taken into consideration?
So the mitigation would still cover that situation. Unanticipated contamination is still covered. So again, the kinds of activities that affect a plume typically have to do with withdrawal of groundwater. And so that is not occurring here. And then taking steps to ensure that if you are doing any sort of construction activities that would go deep enough to potentially encounter that groundwater, that there be protections put in place so that construction workers are not affected and that sort of thing. So I think the mitigation should cover those contingencies.
Well, yeah, but I haven't, as far as mitigation is concerned, we haven't really pursued this issue to the end. I mean, we're still looking at it, and I'm not really sure that this really addresses that situation.
Well, and one other point then I would make is that these amendments don't actually affect what goes on Hidden Hills. So if you look at so Hidden Hills is outside of the area where the land uses are changing. And so the proposal tonight would not affect Hidden Hills one way or the other. Certainly, if there's potential groundwater contamination there, that's something that should be addressed. But again, there's mitigation in place for the entire specific plan area to ensure that those things are taken into consideration.
We should address that before we go any further with this plan.
Well, I'm saying that the actions tonight would not affect what goes on at Hidden Hills one way or the other. Because all the changes to the land use are east of Hidden Hills except for that little area up by waterfront. So it doesn't, the proposal doesn't change, it doesn't actually affect anything near the plume itself. But it doesn't affect the park, doesn't affect Hidden Hills.
If I might point out, Hidden Hills was approved back in 2017. So it had a tentative map. And of course, it's subject to the measures that were in place currently in the EAR. But outside of that, what's being proposed here and shown on this map that I'm pointing here, if you see the border of the SPA is the black line, and that Hidden Hills is right here. So this has what's being proposed here right now, all the mitigation measures being amended, has no bearing on Hidden Hills.
We good? No more questions? All right. With that, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify on this matter, if you could please approach the podium.
Good evening. Tony Frazier with Frazier Design Group, representing lake level and many attendees here tonight on behalf of this item. But before I introduce them, I'd like to thank everybody here, Mayor and Council Member, City staff, Christian, Mel, and Adrian, been working on this, I think, for 12 years with us. It's been a long journey, especially with this amendment, about 7 years, I believe. Mr. Mayor will remember that, among others. But I'd like to thank, most everybody here are actual residents or own property, along also developers. We have Matt Stowe with Lake Development, Carol, Steve, the Level. We have also the Clifton is Stardust, Beezer Home, Taylor, Ina. We have the Level, Mary and Tom and their daughter. We have Holly Hills, Dan and Marlene, and Kunat, or if you don't remind me your last name, Curtin. So we have actual landowners that have been waiting for this for many, many years. And thank you for the current staff. We're able to be in front of you. I'm not going to go through all the details. I think Adrian and Mel did a good job representing and talking about them. I just want to confirm one thing that it's important to mention, that the reason we are here, the reason we've been 7 years in the process, not because we want to do this. It was because we couldn't continue with the plan as was adopted, and we were recommended to go back, redraw it, because one major owner on the east side initially wanted to change the road, and then we went through the whole cost to do that, and then didn't like that. They want to be in the county, and the city does not like condemnations. Then we end up working with a replan to reroute Oak Tree Lane, and this is where we are. Because of this change, some minor changes happen, but the reason we're saying it's not going to happen going easterly, because as you notice, some of the area open space has increased, and one of them is that, I will mention it here, is that where actually Oak Tree Lane was connecting to go east, that was a big area of wetland was discovered in open space. So it kind of makes it harder. We still have a connection for trail to 12 bridges. There's secured easement there. So ultimately we'll have some connectivity. So we really appreciate hearing us, supporting us on this amendment, because it allows people to finally move forward. There's a lot of projects, I know we went through the project at the corners that got approved recently. We're working with Holly Hills to move that forward. I know Beezer Home working on Stardust wants to move that forward, and really hinge it on your approval tonight. It is important to mention that, again, the boundary exclude the approved project Hidden Hills. If there's contention about if there is issues or not, some will agree there's none, maybe, but it's outside our boundary. We should not be discussing it tonight. I appreciate that. We want to focus on the facts, and the fact is that we did what we were asked to do. We're here representing it to you. It's been a long journey. The approval tonight will allow us to, it's not done. This is the step to go to the next step. We can answer any question you have. And I'm here to really ask for your support tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tony. Anyone else wishing to testify on this matter? Anyone online?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
I will close the public hearing. If anyone has any questions of the applicant?
I got mine answered.
That?
Thanks.
No? All right. If that's the case, chair is open to a motion. Christine, can we take these all at
Do we,
once? or
I
you
was gonna
want
say, do we have to
separate?
do them all at once or?
I think you can do them all together. Just as long as you articulate the numbers clearly for
Okay.
the record.
All right. I move that we adopt resolution 2023-179, resolution 2023-180, and ordinance 1070B.
Second.
Okay. Motion Andriata, second Carl Skint.
Yes, Councilmember Andriotta.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen
No.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. That completes our public hearings. We move on to general business. Item 10A, adopt resolution 2023-181, approving the memorandum of understanding between the professional and administrative employee group and the city of Lincoln and related salary schedules. I don't see Veronica, so
That will be me tonight. Our HR Director, Veronica Rodriguez, is on a much deserved vacation, so I'm going to cover this evening. Veronica and her team and sometimes me serve as the city's negotiators with many different bargaining groups we have here at the City of Lincoln. The one that we're here this evening for is for the Professional Administrative Employee Group, and their MOU expired in March of this year after a 3-year term. And over the past 8 months, the city and this bargaining group have met in good faith and worked diligently to negotiate the terms of a successor MOU to provide the employees some assurances for future cost of living increases, as well as remain competitive in pay in the market to retain this group is 54 individuals, and they're all professional, fantastic staff. And so we were excited to try to get a deal done with them that worked for them, and that more importantly, the city could afford sustainably. I'm going to run through the provisions. They're all in your staff report, so I won't spend a lot of time on them. But the first is there's a recognition and coverage. We added an information technology supervisor classification to this group, which is a newer position that supervises IT staff. To the cost of living components is essentially a 3-year deal, 3% COLAs effective retroactively to August of this year. The second COLA will take place on April 7th of 2024, and the third taking place, and they're all 3%, taking place on April 6th of 2025. There's a small deferred compensation agreement that if employees choose to contribute to deferred compensation, the city will match up to $100 per month for employees covered by the agreement. And then less than full-time employees or part-timers will receive a proportionate benefit. There is a component for longevity pay, which is similar and generally consistent with some of the longevity components that you have recently approved or have seen in other MOUs with other bargaining groups, which is after 15 years of service, the employee is eligible for a longevity differential of 3% of their base pay. There's some cleanup language and clarification and additions to standby duty, which will allow employees to be eligible to receive standby pay on weekends, and that standby for less than 24 hours will now be prorated. There have been some provisions added in that will prorate special pays for city provided benefits during unpaid leaves. And finally, the MOU reflects the agreement date of April through March of 2026. The total fiscal impact of this is broken down in your staff report. In raw dollar figures, it's roughly $1,084,000, $84,022. Roughly, and is split up amongst about 12 different funds. As these employees that work in this group work in a variety of different capacities and departments, and so it's not a dollar for dollar for each fund. It depends on how they're allocated. The $1 million cost, I will say, is a total cost of the term of the agreement, and also includes what we would see as employer related costs that are related to the agreement. So that includes like employer taxes, the fringe components of some of the benefits that are not part of base pay are all rolled up into that. From management's perspective, we think this is a very fair deal. We thank the professional and admin group for their patience in allowing us to work through this. We had a number, as you recall, if you date back to March, we were in the midst of completing a couple of public safety deals in addition to a number of other groups that have agreements that are expiring that we're now getting into discussions with now and hope to finish soon. So we recommend approval and thank you for your consideration. I can answer any questions.
Questions from council? Nope. None. Open it up to the public. Anyone wishing to speak on this item? No one in the room, anyone online?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
Chair is open to a motion.
Adopt resolution 2023-191.
I'll second.
All right, motion Lawrenson, second Brown.
Yes, Councilmember Larson,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskin.
Yep.
And Mayor Joyner.
Yes. We move on to item 10B, adopt resolution 2023-182, approving the proposed response to the Placer County Grand Jury report, spending on the homeless with Placer County.
Thank you, Mayor. So in earlier this year, we received a letter from the grand jury after their investigation and into, as you know, every year they publish somewhere between 8 and 10, sometimes more reports on a variety of matters throughout the county. And this year, Lincoln was not named in an individual report, which is fairly rare.
Yeah, it's a miracle.
But we were referenced in an overall report that related to homelessness. And the component of the work that was done in the report was really kind of a subsequent report to one they issued the year before that had to do with homelessness in general, just how services are provided and if they are. This one is much more about how do the community know what we meaning local government, county, and cities are spending on homelessness within Placer County. And to quote them, it says the grand jury was seeking to quantify how much money is actually spent on homelessness throughout the county. And you could see in the report that there's very little funding spent by any of the incorporated jurisdictions on homelessness, and I'll explain why in a moment. And a significant dollar figure if you look at the county's budget line items. And part of that is because the county receives, and homelessness is as much about shelter as it is about health and human services. And so they receive and are mandated to provide those services to all residents, including homeless individuals. So fast forward to what I usually do is I'd already typically read the report. When I get the letter, I fast forward to what are the recommendations they would like us to respond to. There is only one in this case. Finding number 5 states that the 5 incorporated cities and 1 incorporated town in Placer County do not have a homeless budget line items that define sources of funding and expenditures. Their recommendation is that each of the 5 incorporated cities and 1 incorporated town in Placer establish a full accounting of homelessness funding and expenditures to its citizens on an annual basis by January 1st of next year and include this in annual budgets moving forward. So we took a look at this request and just as you're aware, but I'm going to say it anyway, we are not currently in receipt of any competitive direct grants that have been specifically awarded for homelessness services or shelter. And I'm not aware of any even going back many, many years. So that would explain why it is not called out in our budget, because we also don't receive, funding for an astronaut program in Lincoln. So therefore, we do not budget for it. That's, I'm being a little bit,
That's sarcasm?
sarcastic,
Okay.
but it is fair because the concept of what they're requesting is fair because, as you know, homelessness is something that has enveloped our discussion here at a local government level. And I'll just remind the public that in Lincoln, although the perceptions may be different, our homeless count has actually gone down over the last year, and our homeless population accounts for 0.1% of our population, 0.1%. So that said, the council has recently chosen to fund our homeless service pilot program, which we'll have a little quick update for during comments later. And we've had a number of discussions. Christine's been involved in this for a number of years. I know Councilmember Andriotta and Mayor Joyner have been attending localized meetings, regional meetings about this for quite some time. We're very involved, and I suspect that provided that we have some success in this program, we may continue to be involved. And so as we read the grand jury's request about identifying these funding sources, we thought, what's a way that we can do this which wouldn't require us to alter our whole budgetary process, to meet the letter of their request. So as you may have seen in the draft letter that we included, we would propose to agree to a partial institutement of recommendation number 5. And so under the response, we would agree to form a narrative perspective within each budget to indicate funding and anticipated expenditures on homelessness every cycle. We do not run a line item budget in Lincoln. We run a fund-based budget, which is what most, modern governments use these days. And so it wouldn't make sense for us to create a line item because I don't know that tells the story in the same way that a narrative does about, let's assume we've received a grant for $250,000 for homeless services next year. I could create a line item and it'll say line item revenue, 250,000, and we'll show expenditures, and you'll get something out of that, but it doesn't tell the story about what are we trying to accomplish, what's the investment for. So our proposal is to do that, which frankly, we would have done anyway. But it's a fair point. What we would recommend the council does not agree to and will not institute is do it on a yearly basis, because as you know, we are very proud that we just moved to a 2-year budget cycle. And 2, the request indicated that there would be a full separate annual report of homeless funding and budget on a yearly basis outside of the budget document. And we find that to be sort of redundant. We've come a long way in financial transparency here. And so we think that our budget documents speak for themselves. They're quite clear about projects that are funded and efforts that are funded. And we're very proud to share what we hope to do for the homeless now and moving forward. So that's our recommendation for a response to the grand jury. And if approved this evening, or even if approved with edits, our intent is to sign that and have it sent up to the presiding judge and grand jury tomorrow morning.
That's good, Sean. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the council?
Question. What efforts are being taken to reincarnate this campus of hope that we were getting from the gathering in?
I haven't heard anything at all on that in at least 6 months, maybe a
Because
year.
What we're doing is really small scale as compared to something like that, where we're more inclusive treatment facility for the homeless.
Yeah, that's right.
But the Campus of Hope was a proposal on county land with county funds. And as the city manager suggested, Holly and I have been attending sessions for almost 2 years now. And what became very, very clear was each of the jurisdictions felt that their challenges were somewhat unique and that their solutions should be tailored to their individual challenges and their individual means. And I think that the solution that staff has come up with for Lincoln with this project pilot program would not have happened without those conversations. I think it's fair to say that, and there's been really good discussions around that. But Roseville wants to do their own unique thing. Rockland clearly wants to do their own unique thing. And the county could, if they so chose, simply agree to lease that land to the Gathering Inn right now without any of our input. But they've chosen not to do so. So we move forward as we can.
Well, and I think part of the reason that is because no one would ever come right out and say it. But I think the plan was, once they built it, they expected the cities to help fund it once it got started. And we were all, well, where's that money going to come from?
So not just that, the
We're spending
last,
money now, right?
we're about to spend a little bit. on
A little bit, but if that got built, they would expect millions from us each year for operation costs that we don't have.
That's not what I've heard.
It is what I've heard. So the last point in time count put Placer County at a little over 700 homeless throughout the county. The Campus of Hope proposal was around 600 beds, if I recall, which means that immediately they would have to begin expanding. And I'm told, I understand that the general rule is that the homeless population doubles every 7 years. And so that campus would either need to be duplicated elsewhere or be expanded, doubled over a 7-year period. So
But I guess the only thing I'd add to that is it may very well be into the future that a regional homeless facility is something that makes a lot of sense. And it may be that, I think we said this when we set up our homeless pilot program. It may be that this effort that we're putting together is a fail. We may not succeed. But we know what we need to do today. And so I think that the concept of the grand jury's response here, which comes from a really good place, is people are concerned about this. We need to be really clear about what we are doing and not doing. And how does the money flow, if at all? Oh, and one last thing I'll mention, just because I think it's interesting. Now that we're an entitlement jurisdiction, some of that provides a funding source. It's not a lot, but it provides a funding source for us to continue along with this or other really creative programs that we think move the needle here in Lincoln.
any other questions? Seeing none, any member of the public wish to speak on this item? Byron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff. I don't think anybody at this point in time really has a steadfast answer to handle the homeless. I think everyone is moving in the right direction. Maybe not as much law enforcement to the front of it as opposed to actually dealing with the cause and the symptoms and how to deal with that. My only question is, will this down the road, if we don't have some sort of idea as to what the city is indeed charging or costs associated with this, whether it's a police officer's time, whether it's social services, anything and everything that comes up. I realized at the beginning of this, when I was thinking about it, I'm thinking, wow, boy, what a gigantic small pieces to put together. If there's a way in which to at least kind of track what we're doing, I want to make sure that later on down the road, that if for whatever reason, certainly not COVID, but something where the nation somewhat comes together on the issue, then if we could get funds associated with what we can already prove that we're doing, and even can say, and if we had X amount of funds, we could do more of this, and you have something already in place. I'm just wondering if that's something that we need to consider to at least not nickel and dime it, but certainly put out whatever you're trying to go out there and give your best guess estimate in a short little deal about what that involved this year, next year, so on. Just in the event that it comes up, I'd rather have a whole laundry list of things that we've tried and this is what the expense is going to be, and throw that out there as opposed to trying to put that together in a later date. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Anyone online? Gwen?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
wants to. Yeah, I know he does, but it's going to steal his thunder from his city manager's report, but go ahead.
No, I just, so Mr. Chapman's point is, at least as I interpret it, was, so let's say the council set aside $150,000 for this program. We have depended, the only reason that is the upfront budget is that we are depending significantly on volunteer efforts, on nonprofits, on county and other partnerships to really make this work. And we're just happen to be in this very lucky position where we have this group of people that just want to do this as a thing to help people. But to his point, there's absolutely no question that, let's say, even after the first 6-month period, let's assume we expend the $150,000. If we were to add in soft costs, time, et cetera, it's probably, just Christine and I, it probably more like 250, 300. But I think it's a fair point, and we will do that when we had discussed yesterday about doing these regular updates to council, so you kind of know how it's going. Are we being successful? And maybe what we do after the first, we call them, I think we're going to call them sessions or classes, time periods. We'll do some type of analysis of what are we into this for that includes all those other things that aren't necessarily hard costs, which is fair, and we should do it.
Thanks, Sean. Anything else? Go ahead.
But basically, this is just to provide a response to the grand jury report. We're just saying, this is what we're doing.
Yep.
That's all this is.
Correct. Yep.
And I would guess the genesis of the grand jury report and the reason why it was a issue for them is nobody can get how the $33 billion is being spent. So the state won't do it. Some of the larger counties won't do it. So, we're, like 1/10 of 1%. And with the budget we have, the transparency is inherently there.
Yeah, well, but
So small you can hide it.
I think what I'd add to that is I do think that's the genesis. Is you got to imagine that you hear it all. People are very concerned about this issue, and I appreciate the effort, and because what they're trying to do is say, well, what do we really know about what's being spent here, and how is it being spent, and why isn't it why is all that investment not resulting in people getting off the streets in some sort of large context? And so, to the extent that we can at least address that in Lincoln, I think it's fair.
Anything else before I ask for a motion? No, doesn't look like it. So anyone wish to make a motion?
Yep, I move that we approve resolution 2023-182.
Second.
I'll second.
I'm going to give that one to Brown. You got the last one.
Yes. Councilmember Andriotta.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent.
Yeah.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
And Mayor Joyner.
Yes. On to city managers' reports.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So Christine and I met with our faith-based partner yesterday, and site work is beginning next week, which is not a lot of work. We're doing some grading, we're doing some utility work, and then we will be pretty quickly thereafter moving in our first 2 trailers. There's a really, the group, which includes us, but is really volunteers. Christina's helped develop an MOU between us and them, so we know who's doing what. There's a application and interview process to be included in these units, and then some expectations. And we talked a lot yesterday about what constituted, from the group's perspective, success versus failure, and then most importantly, how we report that back to you on a fairly regular basis. And so I think what we landed on was, at least during this first 6 months, you'll see us fairly regularly, probably Christina or I, or most likely Mana, giving you an update on how's it going, what are we learning, what mistakes have we made, what gaps did we not think of, and then we're going to put some serious weight behind sort of a marketing and outreach effort so the community understands how far we've come from the beginnings of an Adopt a Creek program that turned into much more than that, that turned into this. And if we have even just a little bit of success, boy, we'd be pretty excited to share that. So we'll come back with more on that. The only other major thing I'd like to share is that please mark your calendars, October 12th, 10 o'clock, from 10 to I think 2 or 3. We are doing the senior health fair at the pavilion. We have a huge list of vendors. UC Davis, Kaiser, Yep. Thank you to both Councilmember Andriotta and Mayor Joyner. You helped us get some connections that got those folks on board. Dr. Ellis is going to be there. He's going to give a talk on a couple of things. We have the DA, we have Chief Alves is going to give a presentation. We're going to have some light exercise. I mean, there's all kinds of things that people will be able to take advantage of. And we're also working on some transportation for some of our folks that might have trouble getting over there. So we just really, at this point, my real worry is that we're going to have all these vendors and exciting people there, and we're not going to get a very big turnout of actual people attending. So pass on the word if you can, and we'd like to see you there if you can come. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We move on to council initiated business. Anyone have any council initiated business tonight? No? I've got one that I don't know that it is council initiated business so much, but it kind of is. The First Street Community Church is celebrating their 75th anniversary. They apparently sent me a letter requesting my presence last Sunday. I did not get that letter, so what I'd like to do is have some sort of recognition from the council of that 75th anniversary, if that's all right with you, whether it's to bring it back in the form of some type of proclamation or to authorize me to sign a letter.
I would love to do a proclamation. I think that'd be a
Let's do
great
that
idea.
then.
Yeah. And have them come and let's recognize them. That'd be great.
You agree? Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep.
There's no other council initiated business. We'll do committee reports. And I'd like that to include the League of Cities, since we all attended. And Bill, you want to start us off, League of Cities?
Yeah, I attended the League of Cities. It was an interesting program. There were several interesting presentations on homelessness, on the California economy.
I attended actually 1.5 days. But I spent most of my time in the legal section because it was hooked on the presentation about all of the legal aspects, unknowns, and traps, and all of the problems with AI when it comes to running a city. It's really interesting, has impacts for PRA. Impacts, it has impacts on how we keep notes, data, and everything. So it was, and then I got filled into a bunch of
Any other committee reports? No. Okay. Ben?
Sure. I really enjoyed the League of Cities.
It was your first.
It was my first. It had a lot of interesting things to it, some boring things to it.
Yes.
It's like going to school.
You know, I went to the Economic Outlook, one that was very informational. I think I really got more out of the keynote speakers those 2 days, where they talked a lot about communicating and how to communicate with the community from an elected standpoint, as well as being a leader, and how to have equity with others. And that was a really cool story that he had, but being able to meet people where they are as a leader or someone that can help raise others, but from a standpoint, whether it's a teacher or an elected or someone in the city staff, whatnot. But I really feel that that was impactful to me because it's all about the one, right? I mean, we're here to help a community, but it really is about the one person that you can help that can help another person and meeting people. And so I got probably more out of keynote speakers than I did.
That's a great takeaway.
Yeah, so Mayor Jordan and I went to a homeless session, but I'm guessing he's going to want to share on that, so I'm gonna let him do that. Some of the other ones that I attended there were several different ones, but they all centered around how to run a good council meeting as far as disruptions or public comment, best practices. And there was a lot of examples and a lot of discussion. But what I took away from that was that we do a really good job, that we do a good job with public comment as far as, letting people have their say and not cutting them off and just whether we agree with them or not, or whether they're upset or whatever. And then handling when it's a full crowd or whatever. There was a lot of examples and a lot of discussion, but they were very interesting. But I came away from that being like, wow, okay, we're doing a good job. And we are very protective of people's First Amendment rights. And none of us want to squash that. And I just felt good about that. And it was very interesting. And then I had been appointed to the resolution committee, but there were no resolutions. And so that meeting got canceled and we had nothing to vote on, but the speakers were
Ben
good.
has the voter's
Ben
card
has the
right
voter's
here.
card as a souvenir, but there's always very informative things. There's always a lot of great networking, and it was a good conference. And as far as committee reports, I just have one thing. Pioneer is moving forward with expansion into unincorporated Nevada County. And they're just in the beginning stages of that. So they have to get, approval from all the jurisdictions that are partnered with them. So they're just beginning that process.
It's the first I'd heard that. Thank you for that.
We just got notified. It just came out.
I thought of something. One of the highlights was I got to spend some time with an ex-colleague in the Delissa Silli was there.
Oh, yes.
And
yes,
I hadn't seen her since she left.
good.
So
Alyssa's firm helped sponsor the Sac Valley Division Luncheon, and she was there, and it was really great to see her. I did want to add one more thing. In the years past, it seems like that the league is valuable in a lot of ways, but it didn't seem like they were really fighting for local control as much as we'd want them to. This year, I kind of felt like they were more, like they, have kind of had a little bit of a shift. Maybe it was just me and my perception, but I came away feeling a little more comfortable with that there were still some things I didn't agree with, but I felt a little bit more solid with them that they're fighting for local control.
I agree with that. For members of the public who may not know, the League of California Cities is all the cities in California coming together in one place for 2 or 3 days. This year it happened to be in Sacramento. Exchanging ideas, exchanging challenges, trying to figure out how to make their way forward in all this. And I think what I would note, Holly, is even the mayor of Sacramento chose not to be present. So the larger cities were not present in this conference, which left the smaller cities who have to fight much harder because they don't have the resources of these large cities to talk amongst themselves and to try to find solutions for our smaller communities and how we can work together on that. So I think that might have been the difference.
Well, and I will say too, I mean, they've just changed their leadership. We have a new president, but this last year's President Taj, he was very engaged. Like, he went to several meetings. He talked to people. He showed up to places. I haven't seen that up until this point. And so I really appreciated his leadership. I hope our new incoming president does the same thing.
Also the 125th
Oh, that's right.
I missed the cake in the
the league.
expo. I
You missed the cake.
I
There
missed
was
the
a lot of
cake
cake.
because we were in a session and I missed a cake.
All right, so I'll go through this really quickly with respect to the League of Cities. I attended several sessions. Homelessness to house, which basically came out of Santa Barbara County and their efforts to provide scalable I don't want to say neighborhood-based, but community-based housing solutions. So they are, you saw the trailers in the expo. They're using those, and they are effectively dropping what I would call a homeless mash unit into an area within the city limits, and they broke them down into, I believe, 5 different areas. Address the problem there to the degree they can, and then because they don't want to impact that area for too long a period of time, pick it all up, move it, set it up again, and go back at it. So it was an interesting approach. Santa Barbara County obviously has a lot more resources than most of us, but they also have the challenge of land being incredibly expensive. And so how do they find a location for these services? I attended the Main Street for Change in Retail Landscape, which oddly enough was less about Main Street programs and how we can adjust to this increase in online retail, and became more of a discussion of how my city recovered from COVID. That's what it wound up being all across the board, with the exception of Rancho Cordova, who tried to keep it very focused on Main Street concepts. But as you know, Rancho Cordova does not have a downtown. So they're trying to figure out how to create something of a downtown, something of a Main Street. And they're doing that more with gathering places, rather than say, let's build a good old fashioned Main Street with all these businesses on it. Let's build gathering places and then build up around that. So that was kind of almost, my takeaway was that's almost our village concept. Coming into each village, dropping down a commercial center for that village, and then building up around that. So that was interesting. I attended a session on wildfires, and then Councilmember Andreata and I attended the mayors and council members department meeting. So outside of the League of Cities, I attended what turns out to be the last, at least for the elected officials, of the regional homeless task force. I don't know what we're calling it these days, but they seem to have moved on and decided to move forward with staff representatives, but no elected representatives moving forward. I think they're going to get some pushback on that, and they may have a few elected representatives showing up and asking to speak anyway. That is what public comment is for, right?
Mayor, I should add to this in. Christine and I will likely be involved in that effort. And then our brand new and not new Captain Johnson has been nominated by Chief to be our PD rep. So.
Okay. I also attended the SACOG board meeting. There were no items that affected Lincoln at all. It was interesting, however, that there's a fairly new tribe in the Elk Grove area that has now come online with a casino. They were meant to do a 10-minute presentation, kind of introducing themselves. That turned into an hour-long conversation, which was actually intriguing. Other than the fact that it took up an hour of time, it was an hour or so of introduction to California Native American history from their perspective, and how they are trying to re-engage and build their communities back, and are now presenting themselves very much as governments, just as we are, and how we need to partner with them in the same way that we would with any other jurisdiction. I think that was a very useful hour spent in all of that. Following that, you may recall that federal highways came down with a corrective action on Caltrans that affected our funding rounds at PCTPA in El Dorado County, and forced us into what is now a 6-county competitive funding round for state and federal dollars. And as a result of some pushback they got from us and El Dorado, SACOG has set up a committee to figure out how best to move forward in those future funding rounds and find equity within that to where we can hopefully retain as much of our dollars as possible. Right now, it looks like SACOG as an administrative effort will retain probably about 15% of those dollars moving forward. We'll still talk about that. This process is going to take a year and a half to work our way through. And it's going to be a battle all the way along the way. We retain some of that independence on the federal side, but we are going to be thrown deep into a 6-county funding round for all state projects. And it's going to be tough to compete. Completely honest. That is all I have for my committee reports. With that, we move on to information items. Anyone, Bill?
I had the extreme privilege of being an usher at the recent Lincoln Theater Company's presentation of Fiddler on the Roof. I want to tell you, it was an excellent performance and got great reviews. This is not the first time I've attended some of their events, and they do a very, very good job. I think the Lincoln Theater Company is a real asset to the city of Lincoln. I also want to thank the fire department for responding to 2 medical emergencies that we had 2 Saturdays in a row. They did an excellent job. They were there, took care of things. And
Good to hear. Have you gotten the songs out of your head yet?
no, actually, I keep watching the movie. Yana wants me to keep watching the movie and to see the differences. In a movie you can do a lot of different things on stage, but the stage is actually live performance is actually very, very good. It's actually I would consider it almost professional.
Good. Good to hear. Dan?
One information item, city staff from Public Works and Parks and Rec supported the Children's Health Fair last Saturday. It was a success. They didn't have quite as many children this year, and nobody knows why, but that's a very worthwhile activity for the particularly low-income children. So there was a while that I thought maybe we had too many vendors compared to customers, but it worked out.
I have no information items, Ben.
I was going to say that pickleball courts are almost completed. And my family, extended family, which is very into pickleball, they were like, all right, let's have pickleball. And I'm like, well, the nets aren't quite up yet, but it's okay. We can bring our own. Anyways, just they're almost done.
Yeah, they look awesome. You should drive by. I didn't, kudos to Scott, because I thought, just given what he had to work with there, that they might not look totally,
Oh, they look
but
great.
they look totally professional. I mean,
So I'm just a quick observation at Showcase this weekend. It was a very good event. I was visiting with a representative of one of our neighboring communities, mentioned the pickleball courts, and the spouse of this individual hopped in with pickleball courts are a thing of the past. They're on their way out. They've learned that they're much more difficult on the body than tennis. People are breaking their ankles. They're on their way out. You do not want to do pickleball courts. So intriguing that community has taken that stand or perceives that it is somehow more dangerous than tennis. So we'll go ahead and corner the pickleball market.
We must that out on Facebook.
What's that?
Must have found that out on
Yeah,
Facebook.
Yeah. All right. Unless staff has an information item, we are adjourned. Thank you all.